Welcome, listeners, to the Dark Space Station. The Delgata, a commercial reloading and supply vessel, skirted the lower atmosphere of Mars. It had been in orbit for the past few weeks, unloading its cargo, whilst taking back on a manifest aimed for the latest venture that had taken the fancy of the Terran government, the local asteroid belt. Rick Matthews didn't care about the job or the destination. He just wanted to get paid, and handsomely at that. It was his ship, and his say on what upgrades the Delgata got. It had begrudged him that he had been forced to take a shipmate. The orders had been clear: to fly and take missions for the Terran government. They required someone that they could trust on board to help minimize the risk of any cowboy antics and to prevent the cargo from mysteriously being sold or vanishing. Rick wasn't benign to the underhanded tactics other spacefaring pilots would use if they happened to peek at the cargo and found it worth their while to chance on selling for a good price. After all, parts and replacements for ships were hard to come by, and most were regulated by either tech companies or the government themselves. The doors to the cockpit of the ship opened. Stepping onto a small, cramped bridge was Serena Anderson, a young mid-20s woman whom Rick had discovered from their short time together was more of a scientist at heart than what he took her for as a company stooge. All 4 cargo containers are aboard and secured. We're ready to head out once the navigation computer has plotted our coordinates, she stated, taking her seat at the station next to his. Rick didn't grace her with a response. He was getting tired of the government bull. If they didn't trust him by now to run a simple supply and demand mission on a long-haul flight, they never would. It wasn't the fact that he hated Serena. He just didn't like people in general, and always looked to take missions which just included himself, and no one else. The problem was those missions didn't pay, or if they did, was barely enough to keep the Delgata flight-worthy for a few weeks, not to mention the space rations he'd been consuming for weeks, if not months on end. Rick? Hello? Rick? Serena repeated, getting a little annoyed at his non-committal nature, as he just sat with his feet up on the console, chomping down on a small, dried ration pack. Yeah, I heard you, he answered. Computer's just finishing the last set of calculations for the belt, then we can get underway. He finished, indicating towards a screen running through the list of equations. And you're not going to check them? Concern creeping into Serena's words. System's never been wrong before. But hey, be my guest if you want to double check them. Won't want the government thinking I was making off with their cargo, now would we? You really do have a dim view of the Terran government, don't you? Can you honestly blame me? Listen, before you go on a spiel about what they do for you, quote unquote, gesturing with his fingers, I don't care. I only took this job to get paid. End of. The only downside is that to get paid, you have to be on the government's payroll. Now doesn't that sound a lot like privateering space? He spoke. Honestly, I don't give a damn what your reasons are for taking this job. But you can But you can hardly blame them for their, as you say, privateering with all the underhanded cargo selling and space piracy that's gone on in the past. They want some way to keep control of their assets. And just so we're clear, I don't like or trust them either. All this is for me, and them is a beneficial arrangement. I wanted to be in space, and they needed a scientist, so it was a win-win. But that's as far as it goes, Serena fumed, standing, making tracks to leave the bridge. As she got to the door, she turned back to look at him. I hope your goddamn computer doesn't get us killed before we reach the asteroid belt. Before walking out. Rick couldn't argue with Serena's words. Not when she was right. He'd just been an ass towards her, and all she tried to do since coming aboard was be civil and pleasant. Looking back, perhaps he had her down wrong from the jump. His own selfish attitude and prejudice had blinded him to someone who just wanted to be a friend. And in this line of work, they were in short supply. He pressed the console command for camera switching with his heel on his right foot, clicking a few times. The kitchen, corridor, bridge. He gave himself a small wave before continuing. Engineering, raised upper, and then the lower deck of engineering. There, securely tied down, lay 4 container pods. They could easily have passed for stasis pods, except for the visor was replaced for a small, solid black metallic sheet on each. Rick checked the navigational data. All readouts were pointing towards one particular asteroid deep within the belt, with 4 drop-off points located at equatorial distances apart. He sat, rubbing his chin. He knew nothing about the cargo, and hadn't bothered to ask why. So why was it now starting to pique his interest? Had Serena changed him with that one outburst? No, she couldn't have. So what was it about these pods that gave him food for thought? Serena lay on her bed, reading a book on her pad. She'd needed to calm down and get some space from Rick. She couldn't believe someone could be that much of a condescending ass. And she'd tried. But from day one, it had been an uphill battle, and even now, she just felt like she was in the way. And tired. So tired of walking around on eggshells around him. There was a knock on her cabin door. She didn't bother answering, giving him a taste of his own medicine. There was a knock again. "What is it, Rick?" she asked, but got no answer. A third knock. Followed by a fourth. Placing down her book, she headed for the door, ready to give Rick a piece of her mind. Yet, as she opened the door, the corridor was empty, a little unnerved and creeped out. She closed the door and returned to reading her book, when another knock came. Angry and a little scared, she stormed to the door, opening it, coming face to face with Rick. "You asshole!" she yelled. "I'm sorry? What have I done now?" Rick asked, completely confused. "You know damn well what it was, and it wasn't funny." "Serena, I have no idea what you're going on about. I've literally just left the bridge to give you the navigational data to look over because I thought maybe I misjudged you," holding the readouts and handing him to her. "Well, if it wasn't you, then who the hell was just knocking on my door just now?" "What?" "Yeah, about several times. I thought it was you." "Serena, we're the only two aboard, and I've been on the bridge. Are you sure it was knocking?" "I know what knocking on a door sounds like, Rick." "Okay, look, I'll check the footage. See if I can find an answer." He turned to leave, seeing she needed a moment, but needed the answer to his question. "Serena, do you know what's in those containers? Did the government tell you?" he asked. "No, I don't. All I was told was it's a supply run from Mars to the asteroid belt. That's all," she answered. With that, Rick nodded and left, returning to the bridge to try and find an answer for Serena. He didn't believe in ghosts and doubted the Delgata had fallen into such bad shape at the moment that she was already falling apart. Serena paced for a few moments. Was he telling her the truth? Had he really been on the bridge the whole time? If so, what and who had been knocking on her door? The navigational data was secondary in her mind. She couldn't concentrate while this gnawed at her. Gathering herself, she stepped out, heading for the bridge. To his credit and word, or maybe he was still trying to convince her of this practical joke, Rick was looking over the camera recordings of the last 10 minutes, looking for anything out of the ordinary. "Anything?" she asked. "Camera looks clean from here." Rick pulled up a display on his screen. "That's me, here on the bridge. And here," bringing up another display on his screen panel, "is the corridor. Nothing within the last 10 minutes. "That's impossible." "I know what I heard, and I'm not going crazy," Serena exclaimed. "Never said you were. But something's not adding up here." "You know, if this is all a big joke..." "Serena, I'm not laughing. Look, let's just get underway and be done with this cargo. I'm getting creeped out by it just sitting in my hold," Rick stated, beginning the startup sequence with the data the computer had programmed for the asteroid belt. The journey to the asteroid belt was tense and fraught, yet Serena could barely sleep or rest. The knocking and fear of it kept her awake. Even though they'd both agreed to take shifts, it was almost impossible for her. No one could have snuck aboard, and if so, why? Surely, if someone was running away from Mars, they'd be trying to get to Earth, not the asteroid belt. Soon her fear was starting to turn to anger as she headed towards the kitchen, needing a drink. The corridor lights flickered on as she entered out into it, each step sounding like foot on metal, echoed like a chamber around her. The door to the kitchen opened. She peered into the darkness. Nothing had been touched since the afternoon. Yet the darkness seemed to carry a presence all of its own. Once she reached the fridge, she could almost feel as though she was being watched from the shadows. Dark shapes seemed to cast onto walls from the fridge light, so much that she had to steal her own thoughts from playing tricks on her. Yet, as she turned to leave, a metallic object sound reverberated behind her. "Hello? Who's there?" she called. "Rick? Rick, pick up," speaking into the wall communication device. "Go ahead. Switch to kitchen monitor camera. Something's in here with me." "1 second. I don't see anything. I'm telling you I'm not alone in here. Hold on. I'm coming." Serena kept her ground, studying the darkness, trying to see shapes that shouldn't be there. She felt around the worktop for a portable flashlight. As for the briefest of moments, something caught her attention. A figure standing at the far end of the kitchen area, looking back at her. She backed away, still feeling for the flashlight, her fear and panic racing. Then the door opened, giving her a fright. "Oh my God, Rick!" "You say someone's in here with you?" "Far corner. Right there," pointing towards a figure cloaked in darkness. Rick raised his flashlight towards the figure. As a light hit it, they both relaxed. Yet they were still unnerved. "It's only a spacesuit." "Rick, I heard a metallic crash, and it wasn't from me." Rick began checking the kitchen area from top to bottom. "You know what's weird? You were right about earlier. The computer's missing 10 minutes of footage from the corridor. Someone's replaced it with a loop." "Oh, well, that just makes me feel a whole lot better. Thanks." Rick ended his sweep by the far end wall, leading towards the engineering hub. "Serena, I'm gonna go check on our cargo, see if it's been tampered with." "I'll keep an eye out on the bridge," Serena responded, heading towards it. The engineering hub was just as dark as the kitchen area. Only the light source from Rick's flashlight illuminated a small area. The workstations, piping, and metallic chains that dangled from them gave any sense of an industrial feel. Yet this felt more like a tomb or spider's web than anything else. Twice now, whatever or whoever else was aboard had tried to interact with Serena, and not him. Was he expendable? Not part of the plan? Or was there some other reason for this? But he couldn't help feel that this all had something to do with the 4 cargo pods. Slowly he approached the end of the raised platform, steeling himself to look down onto the next level, wondering what he might find. In one part of his mind, he hoped to find nothing, no disturbance, some other logical reason for this. Maybe Serena wasn't cut out for space travel. Maybe she was going crazy. But he'd been alone here before. And this, right here and now, was the worst he felt. Never before had he crept through the Delgata. Never before had he feared any part of his ship. Until now. His flashlight beamed down. He peered over the edge. 3 of the boxes were open, and the 4th displayed a countdown timer. "Serena, the cargo is open. I repeat, the cargo is open. Something or someone was inside." He spoke as quiet as he could, studying the black obsidian containers. A hand then grabbed him at the back of the neck, throwing him off the ground, slamming him into a wall, with such force it felt like that of a freight train. He looked at the figure, a metallic black obsidian figure was walking towards him, as if sizing him up. Serena watched on from the monitor, almost horrified, seeing the figure stalking towards Rick. It was only in her momentary gaze of looking away from the monitor that she caught the door to the cockpit begin to open. She slammed her fists onto the controls to engage the automatic lockouts, sealing the door back shut. Fear took hold of her as a pair of metallic thuds rained against the door. Switching the camera to the corridor, she could see two figures standing by the door, trying to get in. "Serena, blow the decompression airlock in engineering," Rick ordered. "Not while you're inside there," Serena called back. "Serena, whatever these things are want control of the ship. We can't let them have it. Do it, now!" Rick ordered. Seeing the metallic entity getting closer to Rick, she did as requested, activating the airlock. A warning boom echoed throughout the Delgata as the doors opened. All the air began getting sucked out, pulling on the metallic entity, slowing its advance towards Rick as he scrambled for the kitchen door, hauling himself through it, locking it shut. Serena watched on as the 4 cargo containers were flung from the ship, along with the metallic entity from the engineering section. "Serena, open the doors between the corridor and the engineering section, but leave yours. We'll flush the last 2 out," Rick stated, finishing securing his spacesuit and grabbing the nearest metallic rod he could find. He stood, ready, near the kitchen to the corridor, ready to smash those things to pieces as soon as Serena opened the door. He steeled himself, preparing to go out swinging to defend his ship. The doors parted. The metallic entity nearest to him hadn't had time to react, as it was swept off its feet and into the void of space. The second did have time. Grabbing hold of the door frame, it lunged at Rick, sending them both into a tumble towards the airlock and into space. The entity took hold of his leg as he kicked and thrashed to release its grip. Yet it held on even tighter, squeezing his right leg, crushing the very bone itself. Rick let out a cry of pain as he felt his foot twist at an unnatural angle. As hot pain rushed through him, he could see the entity, whatever it was, had snapped his foot. He whacked and pelted the thing, hearing nothing but metallic thuds reverberating off its frame, almost as if it was unfazed. The entity, having finished crippling his right foot, tried to grab hold of even more of his right leg, and in that moment he contemplated letting go, allowing space to claim them both. It would save Serena, and perhaps he would find his eternal peace and quiet among the stars. He slowly counted. 1, 2. Just as he steeled himself to let go, the Delgata was rocked by something from outside. Then again. And again. Each rock seemed to cripple the entity, and slowly released its grip before it fell lifeless on the floor. All Rick could see as he crawled from the kitchen to the engineering hub, now exposed to space, was the asteroid belt, and an almost rhythmic set of blue flashing pulses coming from somewhere in front of them.